Leadership and Management Department in the College of Business at Florida International University. And I also am the moderator for this panel. And I'm honored and excited to moderate it. And I'm excited to share and learn and grow with all of you. And it's just great that we have the opportunity to learn from one another, not just to put some of those and other ideas in practice in the real world, but also for some of us who are faculty, we would love to bring these ideas into the classroom as well. And I want to also thank our FIU MSHRM program and Mentoro for their partnership in putting this panel together. So just for everybody to know, the FIU MSHRM program is a one-year specialized master's degree in human resources. And we have been ranking #1 3 years in a row. The program is available both face-to-face and fully online. And I want to truly thank Iko Ortega, program manager, Dr. Mark Weinstein, the faculty director for the MSHR program, and also Cindy Chow, the recruiter for the MSHR program, because they're just doing amazing, incredible things out there to make sure that our MSHRM program is very, very successful, and it is. And I want to thank also all the graduates and current students who are going through the program. And we want to give special thanks to Mentoro. Mentoro is a non-profit organization that develops mentoring programs for young professionals. Of course, as you know, we're all young professionals, whether you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, or 90s, we're all young. So we're really proud to partner up with Mentoro. So we want to thank Sandra Abi-Rashed, co-founder of Mentoro, who actually initiated this whole idea. So we're all here thanks to Sandra. So thank you, Sandra. And I also wanted to thank our COB marketing team for all their efforts, including marketing, branding, and social media promotion. So thank you, Christina, Emily, and Brandon. They're the behind the scenes people, but if it wasn't for them, there wouldn't be so many of us here in this room today. So thank you to all three of you. And last but not the least, I would like to give my special thanks to our panelists. They're also special to us, and we have met them previously. They're just truly wonderful. So I want to introduce Nadine Hubel. Nadine Hubel is the CEO of Heinemann Americas Inc. She's also part of the Mentoro family. I mean, she works for a very successful top retailer company, very successful. And, we're just so proud to have her here. And we have Olivier Rosier. He is the VP of Human Resources for Club Med. I mean, everybody knows Club Med, right? He's also with the Mentoro family. So we're so honored to have him with us today. And another panelist that we have is Karen Vieira. She is the Senior Vice President and also Chief People Officer for Church's Chicken. And she's also an MSA HRM graduate, and we're so honored because she's with us and she's the graduate of our MSHRM program. And we also have another panelist who's also an MSHRM graduate, that is Daniel Zumbrunen. Daniel, thank you so much for being here. He is the Vice President of Global Talent Development for NBC Universal. So, I mean, you can just listing all the names and what they do and the companies that they work for. Obviously, that speaks for itself. We have a wonderful panel that we actually put together for you. And I'm just going to very briefly lay out what we're going to do in the next several minutes till 1 p.m. So I took about 5 minutes to do the welcome, introduction, and thank you. So we're going to have the panel for about 40 minutes, and we already have a couple of different questions, and we shared the questions with our panelists. There's nothing hidden, everything is transparent. So, so I'm going to start asking those questions, and we're going to actually have a conversation and learn from one another. And after the 40-minute panel discussion, we're going to have a 10-minute of Q&A with our wonderful audience. And again, thank you for being here. So we're going to have a little Q&A session. And then the last 5 minutes, we're going to conclude the session and then talk about some key takeaways. So my role today, along with Cindy, with our MSHRM program, we're going to be, while I'm moderating, we're also going to be taking notes because we want to make sure that we give you some key takeaways for the last 5 minutes of the panel. And also we want to put together a more detailed notes for key takeaways, and then we want to share them with the audience after the panel. So we want to do that as well. Now, before further ado, I'm ready to go ahead and get started with our panel. So again, we have these 4 wonderful panelists, and again, our topic is how do we lead change effectively when there's constant change? How do we keep our teams engaged when times are challenging? And just for everybody to know, obviously we're going through really challenging times right now with the pandemic. Our panel is not focused on the pandemic per se, but we know that it's definitely a topic that's going to probably come up over and over again, because it's part of our conversation of how do we lead, how do we keep our people engaged when times are challenging, when there's so much change happening. So I want to start the panel by asking our panelists, how do we lead change effectively when there's constant change? How can we lead change effectively? That's the first question that I wanted to start asking.
I can kick it off. I would say, as human beings, as we think about it, when there's a lack of clear information, fear, uncertainty, and doubt can often creep in. And this answer, it's my best advice. It's simple. It might be underrated, but I think we have to constantly communicate where we are, what's happening in our companies, and keep that constant communication going. And some of the tactics that we've used is we communicate daily on our digital workplace with our employees. We share company progress. We insist that the managers hold monthly meetings and also check in with their employees, their direct reports. So there's some requirements around communication, because it's not a one-hit wonder. It's regular, and it has to be scheduled with quality messaging to be effective.
Thank you so much, Karen. I saw Olivier raising his hand. Okay.
And following what has been said, for me, the key success factor is the communication, the information. And for me, I'm convinced that there's three axes of those communication that we have to address at the same time. The one to whole, one to few, one to one. And the one to whole, I think, as Karen mentioned, we can use, and we are using in my company, Workplace, the Facebook for the company. We are doing town hall, all hands on desk, in order to cascade the information. In that part, what is very important is to involve the CEO and the C-suite. They have to be responsible for that. Then on the one to few, that's basic, but we have to respect those basic, is to schedule a bi-weekly meeting with each services, each department, in order to exchange what happened in the department, in the services. And third point, that because sometimes we are forgetting, that is on a weekly basis, could be bi-weekly, but having a formal one-on-one with each member of the team in order to proceed in two approach. First, that's the check-in. Check the mindset. How do you stand? How do you feel today? Then second is to analyze where do we stand about what have been achieved, what are the difficulties, and having these difficulties. By managing this circle of communication, you are really sure that people, they know what your company are doing and what your departments are doing, what your services are doing, and they are more able to discuss each other and to have sense.
Yes, that's great. I mean, definitely communication is so crucial. And thank you, Olivier. You mentioned different kinds of communication and how important it is that we communicate and include, constant communication or, regular communication. Karen also mentioned that, and in addition to that, having the C-suite involved in those communications and being transparent and sharing that information, and then doing that constantly. I saw was it Daniel? Were you raising your hand?
I did. Thank you. And I think what I totally agree with, but what both Karen and Olivier said, the piece that I would maybe add on as a thing to think about, especially in times like these, which I feel like we're going to say times like these a lot. But in this space where change is so uncertain, you know, it's easy to say, have all of these communication methods, but when you don't necessarily have a black and white message that you can immediately say, we're going to do this, in the absence of that, is thinking about the backdrop of like, what guiding principles can you share? As you know, as an organization, as leaders, we don't always have the immediate answer to the problem. And the past, you know, year we've been living through it has proven that time and time again, that we learn new things every day and we have to change course. But I think, as you know, it's better to get in front of the communication and say that we have things that are going to guide how we move forward, how we make decisions, how we plan through the change. And so that even if the path isn't clear, and I think that's going to be true on the other side of this pandemic, even if the path isn't clear, if you can communicate some guiding principles, like we just started communicating yesterday, the beginning of thinking about how do we start returning more people to the office. But the first thing that we stated, and that we'll hold ourselves accountable to, is that employee safety is going to be number one. So if anything starts to round a corner on safety, then we're going to reassess, you know, we're going to reassess a step if something proves itself to be, you know, certainly, knock on wood, fingers crossed, that won't be the case, but that we let those guiding principles help us drive through the change, even as, you know, especially when it's not entirely clear exactly what the next step needs to be.
Wow.
And if I maybe may
Yes, please,
add as well. So I agree with what Karen, Olivier, Danielle, and what you were saying. So maybe also another aspect I want to add, and something really a practical example of what we have done is, in a way I would call it also demystify the feeling, the personal emotions about change. So I guess you guys are all familiar with the Kapler-Ross change curve. So something we have done with the team is really, we have walked them through the curve, although most of them already knew it. And then then I shared a very personal story about a change journey I went through. And I was talking about a very positive one, because I was talking about the change when I got promoted to the position where I am now. It was a huge change for me, coming from Germany, going to Miami. And it was something super positive. But I still went through all those, you know, steps of denying it, of getting into a depression, of leaving my home country, and so forth. And this was very strong for everybody to hear about my personal journey. And then what we did in addition to this, we then asked everybody anonymously to put where they are in their change journey. And this was quite powerful as well, because suddenly it allowed everybody to see, oh, I'm in the depression phase, but I'm not the only one. Or and then also to see that others were maybe had already passed the depression, and then they could, the people who were in the depression could look at the others and say, hey, my colleagues made it through, so I'm going to make it through as well. So this was really powerful, to make it a very personal story that change is very personal, but also very collective.
It's just so wonderful what you mentioned, Nadine, because what you're saying is that, you know, you would share your personal story, and then there was also room for others anonymously to share. So, you know, the whole team can share these stories and experience, and then see where each of them are. And they know that there's definitely light at the end of the tunnel, that we do go through challenges, but then, you know, there are others who have gone through them successfully. So we can actually look up to that place we're going to end up being at some soon point, hopefully. I mean, what a wonderful thing, right, to share those stories with one another and experiences, and making the workplace so much more humane, especially during challenging times that we go through. So thank you for mentioning that. Did any of our panelists want to add anything before we move forward? If not, I think I'm ready for us to move on. Okay. So one question that I wanted to ask all of you is, could you give us an example of how your organization went through a change effort successfully, and would you share with us perhaps the lessons you have learned? Because we know, I think we all know here, that it's not easy to lead, right? It's not easy to lead. It's not easy to lead a lot of people, especially when, you know, during challenging times. So the question is, you have you gone through a successful change effort, and what were the lessons learned from what you went through? And anybody who wants to chime in, they can chime in. No need to raise a hand, but I think, okay, so Olivier, I think you're raising a hand. We talked about raising hands, so it's okay if you're raising a hand, but okay. Olivier,
so maybe, so currently we are facing a lot of change because I'm working in a worldwide company with a lot of resorts, 70 resorts, and I have to manage resort office in this area. And we have to adapt everything due to the COVID. But what I want to maybe exchange is not that, because that it's temporary. After the way that we are leading company is to accompany, to be the enabler of the strategy, and the big change sometimes that we have to face is to adapt the organization, the people skills, everything to in order to reach the goal of the strategy. In our company, so the main change that I've addressed on that topic is when we switch to be our strategy to be upscale, high-end experience. So it has an impact on the skills on the people, on the client expectation, global, internationally. So it has an impact also on the language skills, on everything, the way that we are selling our product, and also on the digital, because we transform the experience of our clients, but also the employee experience by leveraging the digital, implementing Teams, everything. And on those change, for me, the insight I've got is we impacted 4 areas: the organization, the structure, the system, the management, and the culture. It was very huge. So in the when you are leading such a change, so the way that we proceed is by involving, creating, break down the project into different streams and responsibilize. I think that is being successful for that because we responsibilize the C-suite and each C-suite to be a sponsor of each stream. Each leader, the leader of each substreams was a key talent, a high potential, and all the team, we gave her all the team, the potential and the people with expertise in order to proceed with a clear roadmap and with real moment to celebrate success. And that's at the end, what I think we achieve a double digital growth, and we have been able to open new resorts. So the main success of DAST, it was by involving people, by having an approach bottom up, but also, again, maybe related to the point I mentioned before, is to connect people at the top management, the C-suite, with the people that they are doing the change, and with a constant communication with moment campus to align people and to mobilize, because that's key. And we have to recognize and encourage people about what has been achieved and give them a sense of we are improving, we are getting things done. For me, that's the best approach.
Maybe if
Wow.
I may add, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, if I may add also another story, and this story is actually about storytelling. You know, I work for a company who's 141 years old, so it's a very old company, family company. But in the US, we are quite young, and in the US we started as a wholesale company, and about 3 years ago we won our first contract to operate retail stores on board the Carnival cruise ship. So it was a big transformation. It was a big change from a wholesale company to a retail company. And I think what made us successful in this change, because we won the contract, and 3 months later we had to operate our first store. So it was like crazy times. But we were really able to make everybody feel part of a big story, of something historic. You know, it's 141 years of history, and this was the first time that we were operating retail stores in the US. So really everybody felt part of something really big. And you could feel that although it was a lot of work, it was a lot of night shifts, and it was a lot of sweat, and we didn't have the processes in place yet, and many things were unclear because we had 3 months of getting ourselves ready. But everybody pushed through because this was about this story. This was about this historic moment. And it was also about really making sure that no matter which level you were from a hierarchy perspective, we were all sitting in the same boat. And I remember I helped unpacking boxes, and I was there when we sold our first product on the ship then, and I was standing next to the cashier to do this. And yes, so this is how we got the buy-in, because it was something really special and really big, and everybody felt I'm part of something fantastic.
Isn't it amazing that when we set big goals, it can be accompanied with so much excitement and momentum? Sometimes I think that people and companies are scared to set such big goals, but it was huge to do this in the United States, because it's a brand new market, brand new everything, right? So yes, you can use some of your old information, but there's so much unknown, and there you are put in the middle of it, and you want to succeed, and every team member is connected and excited, and it's tough. I bet it was very tough to go through that, but everybody's excited, and you're really talking about a true team effort that was displayed. That's very inspiring. Did any of our panelists want to chime in and give an example? Or
Sure, I can give an example. So I've been with the company for 3 years, and one of the goals that I had in coming on board was to launch a people brand. But what I noticed is we're in 27 countries internationally, and the company has a different name. And what I observed is that my U.S. counterparts and employees did not even think of the international division as one. So we had 2 different mindsets, and that was a challenge for me. If I was going to launch the people brand based on the company values, I felt like I had to start a year ahead and start bringing the teams together. And so one of the ways I did that is really talking about the goal of us thinking of ourselves as one team, one country, right? And so I started talking about it, and then I put people on cross-functional teams that worked internationally and domestically on restaurant design or different projects that would be applicable. And we have Asia, EMEA, and the Americas region. So even those regions are very different when you're dealing with recipes, or you're dealing with design and look. But by putting the teams 1 year in advance on projects where they work together, we reported out together, we had common deliverables. Then I had that same group, I had the international and domestic teams help me work on how they saw a people brand. What did it mean to them internationally? What could we agree on as a single platform to roll out a people brand? What were going to be the values? What were the pillars that we would work under? So that all the work in advance of helping people think as one company before I launched the initiative of a people brand was so important. And I pushed it back a year. I said, we're not there. I can't launch a single people brand when we don't think and function as a one company. So I think it was a learning experience for me, a lot of listening on how people view the different aspects of the company, and a lot of communication and partnering to drive that forward. And I think delaying it a year was the right strategy to implement.
Karen, it seems that it was such a wonderful idea to put together these teams so much in advance, right? You know, I mean, I don't know how other people work, but I know that for me, when I start working on something much earlier, all that time that it takes, it allows me to get more creative over time, to get more information. It's just so important for individuals and companies to be proactive and start processes early on so that there's time for people to change their hearts, change their minds, and come together and unite, right? So you know, and all of you, you know, our panelists are working for, you know, international companies where obviously being united but also being localized must be so important all at the same time. So Karen, thank you. I mean, what a wonderful point that was.
Yeah, and one of the
Just
things
to
I
jump
think is,
on that, if I may, I think what is interesting, by launching a project such in advance, you will have two benefits also with the cross and the opportunities to develop new friendship and also the interdisciplinary collaboration. What is, you are breaking the silos into your company and you are creating a sense of belonging. What is very important, because when you are facing a change, you need to have team resilient enough to continue to force. And on the other hand, so what Nadine highlight for me, I'm very convinced, when you are to lead a change, reinforce the roots, because it's because you have the roots, beautiful roots with the storytelling of your company, that you can imagine, advise, foresee a future. For me, that's the two approach. In each project, they are they are giving you the key success factors.
and I think I had to have a little bit of courage in there to say we're not ready to launch a people brand because we don't think like a one company team yet. So just having to step up and, you know, my boss, the CEO, let him know, no, I can't, we need to do more work in other areas and build those friendships. Like you said, the camaraderie, we had to build that before. It would have been artificial if I had done it any other way. And, you know, I do think sometimes in HR and leadership, we have to have the courage to say, this isn't the right path. There's another path. I'll get there, but let me tell you why I have to go this direction first. And I'm glad that I did it, and it's been very successful. It's a 2-year journey, so it was a journey.
Well, and Karen, it seems that it was very helpful to be transparent, right? You know, explaining, you know, as you know, I mean, we teach this in the classroom, right? You know, when you are leading change efforts, you want to explain to your people what you're doing and why you're doing it. You know, you know, when a plan makes sense, you know, when the company is going in the right direction and it makes sense, and we know the reasons why, it's so much more easier to create momentum and for people to go, you know, for that goal, versus when, you know, there's no communication, or there's very little communication, the communication is not transparent, or it's not accurate, or the top management maybe do not agree on what exactly the communication should be. So, you know, kind of going back to Olivier's point on, you know, the C-suite and everybody else, you know, working together, you know, being united together, and then having those conversations are so important. And actually a number of you mentioned. And I also liked Olivier mentioning the cross-disciplinary teams, because, you know, in scientific research, we know that a lot of innovation comes from cross-disciplinary work. So when we have teams of cross-disciplinary individuals coming from different backgrounds and different scientific fields, even, you know, a lot of innovation can take place in those environments where there's so much diversity of information, knowledge, and so on. So thank you for making that comment. Did anybody else want to chime in with an example, or should we move on with the?
I was going to briefly just mention you know, as I was reflecting on this question, one of the biggest changes that we've experienced, and maybe stay in a really HR-y space for all of the HR folks that are on the line, was looking at kind of the inertia and the processes that had existed within the organization, specifically performance management. We as an organization made the shift based on like a lot of the neuroscience that many of the people on this panel and the call may be familiar with, of how ratings that are a part of performance management suck away at the value of the performance conversation and the feedback mechanisms that exist there. It brings up our lizard brain as soon as somebody puts a number next to you, and the fear makes us start to retreat. So we led a change effort that took about 3 years, just to the point, like Kara was talking about, in some of these efforts, like it takes time to help people understand, that if you've been evaluating people since the 80s, when Jack Welch taught us that we needed to put everyone in a rank order and everyone needed to be assigned a score, and we needed to throw away the bottom and everything that went along with that. As our companies evolve, like we're a creative organization at heart. And so to be able to give feedback without fear is really critical for us as a company. And we realized like our performance processes didn't necessarily align with that. So it was a multi-year effort to really strip out how do we like rating people with numbers versus providing constructive feedback and the things that people need to actually develop and get better. But that brings up the question, as you go through any change effort, of all of the other downstream implications, because I'm sure many of the folks that are on the line, sometimes those performance ratings got pulled and went into how you think about talent planning, or how you think about compensation, or who's going to get a better bonus, and all of those things. It forced us to really look at how do we untangle some of those processes and ask, do we need to use the performance evaluation in that one-on-one conversation with a leader and their team member to be the only place where we capture that kind of value mechanism of comp? So we tried to force ways to separate that so that you could have a better performance conversation without necessarily letting compensation be like a trap in that space, which just is another one of these pieces where it takes so much time, and you have to fight against that organizational inertia and just keep that why messaging ever prevalent. And I think, everybody, even back to that change curve that Nadine mentioned, like everybody, I think even has experiences that exact change curve in a performance evaluation session of the anticipation of the change, and then the realization that the number in your head is different than the number on the paper that your boss is giving you, because fives don't exist as a real, they're on the paper, but nobody can give them. We've all been in that world. So I think some of those pieces just popped to mind for me as we were talking about major change efforts in this space, and just the constant why communication, how prevalent that has to be, and that you've got to be willing to put it, like if you're committed to the change, you have to be willing to put in the time and realize that the change is messy and it may have tentacles into other stuff, as our organizations have all these intertwined systems.
I love, Daniel, that you said that you're a creative we are creative organizations at heart, and that's where we want to be, right? We want to be creative at heart. And I love that we're emphasizing, again, teamwork. We're emphasizing being able to receive constructive feedback and being able to grow from that, and also receiving feedback without fear. I love that you mentioned that. It's so important to be able to do that. And it's impossible to summarize all the ideas, but let me move on with the next question. And I think that there's some movement in our chat. I didn't check it yet, but let me ask well, you know what? Should we check the chat very quickly? Maybe there is a, okay, so Laura, okay, so Laura asked if anybody migrated from a platform where performance evaluations were independent of compensation to a pay-for-performance organization. Can we answer this question at the Q&A, because I think it's a really good question. So let's do that. Okay, so let me ask the next question. It's one of my favorites. How do you actually keep your teams engaged and motivated during challenging times? I mean, you are working with individuals and they have families. Now we have, on top of all the challenges and the changes that are going on, we have the pandemic on top of that. So give amidst everything that's going on, how do you exactly keep your teams motivated, engaged, and keep on going? How do you do it? How do you do it?
I can start. Um, so I think it's especially in these times of uncertainty, and I agree with Daniel with what you said earlier, that at the moment so many things are uncertain and are not clear. I think it's also important to give kind of guidelines or a scope as much as you can. So so what we have actually done is we have a 3-year plan, and although maybe 2020 and 2021 will be not as we had actually planned it out, but our 3-year plan still remains our 3-year plan. Then we have our 1-year goals. Then we have our 6 months thematic goal, and then we have our 2 months tactical goals. So we really like to break it down from a 3-year to a 2 months, so that everybody knows what we are working towards. And so this allows us, at least within the 2 months horizon, to be as specific as we possibly can. So kind of to eliminate uncertainty as much as we can. At the same time, also making sure that people understand that we are setting priorities, so that we are not overwhelming people, that everybody has a kind of a guideline to understand, okay, these are my 2 months tactical goals. So immediately, this is also my 2 months priority. This is what I need to work towards. And I just think that this stability and this feeling of the company, the CEO, the HR team, and so forth are doing everything they can not to overwhelm me. This actually allows people to continue staying engaged and motivated. And then we have other tools, fun tools, and so forth. And I can talk about this later, but I think this is really the most important for us.
Nadine, like you gave so macro, and then like I so micro, and like within just the team that I work on, like my compatriots that I'm colleagues that I'm with every day, we've tried to really in this space lean into some of the personal connection stuff that, you know, all those meetings, the little banter pieces that would have fallen away. And we used to, if we were live in person and we were cheersing something, you know, we'd have our chin moments. And so we still have maintained kind of virtual chin, but because of time zones and all these global organizations, it's no longer seems quite right to be drinking in these spaces, because it's 9 a.m. for somebody and it's 7 p.m. for somebody else on the team. But we've really just leaned into some of those like just common human elements that we can talk about and have the silliest debates. Like, let me just tell you, if you can throw a room the question of what is your breakfast cereal of choice and why, you will be blown away by the visceral and very focused responses, getting back to like knowing your people that Karen was talking about. Like, once you hear somebody give you a 30-second thesis on why Raisin Bran is the best breakfast cereal because of the mouthfeel and texture, like you know them in an entirely different way. So we've tried to lean into some things like that just, you know, like, what's your public sub order? What's the thing from Trader Joe's you can't live without? What's like some of those pieces like really have allowed in a really short amount of time, because we're all time starved and we're sick of looking at ourselves on the webcams, but these like bring back a spark of humanity that you kind of need to stay engaged and connected to all that big picture stuff that you were talking about, Nadine. But like, this helps us keep it like that you want to do it around people that you like, and not just boxes on the screen.
Completely agree, and that's what I was referring to, that all the fun part we are doing as well. So yeah, great stuff.
Now I want to know everyone's favorite cereal, so feel free to put that in the chat, everyone. There are 60 of us, so what is everyone's favorite cereal? Okay, let me move, just because we have still a few minutes left, I want to ask one more question. Okay, this is another one of my favorites. What do you do when your teams are exhausted? How do you drive performance when they're going, okay, this is maybe a little too much. What do you do when they're exhausted, or if you have a feeling that there is exhaustion creeping up and it's just a little overwhelming for the team?
So I would talk to that for just a moment. I think sometimes just stopping and celebrating and checking in with people, seeing where they are. But I think your celebration and your recognition have to be ongoing. So, and I love what Nadine said about goals, because I think goals, we're talking to an HR group. Goals are really important to keep people focused, and they know what they're working on. They know what they're a part of, and they know what they're working to. And sometimes that fatigue sets in when you don't know what you're supposed to be doing, or when you're not sure what's happening. But when you're focused and you celebrate, that seems to help alleviate that level of stress. And then just sometimes taking out and having some fun. We have a culture team that comes together every month and does a virtual celebration. And as an executive team members, we have these funny awards. I have a chicken award that I give out to somebody once a month, and really talk about what they did. And my chief marketing officer, my colleague, he has a jalapeno that he gives away. I mean, it's just have some fun. These are people that are human, connect in, but I really believe that you have to do this along the way, and keeping people focused with their goals and understanding of what they're working on, so they feel good, they feel like they're achieving things, they know what road they're on, they know what direction they're headed. So thank you to my HR training to make sure that our 5-year strategy, and we're very transparent on our priorities. They're on our website. We actually share in our digital workplace what each team is working on, so that transparency is helpful as well.
Wow, that's great. And just to ask one final question, how do you ensure well-being in your companies, just to make sure that employees are doing good, just overall any well-being type practices that any of you are involved in with your companies, or that you're leading or your company's leading?
I'll just share one of the things that brought in last year, not knowing that this was going to be the year that we had, was a behavioral health program. And we also launched an exercise program through a burn along. It's a virtual app. How timely was that? But we made it a little bit more fun, where if people want to take half an hour and work out together as a team virtually, they can do it. And we really encouraged it. You don't have to show yourself on the screen if you don't want to. But I think your wellness programs, and we've continued some of the lunch and learn sessions on nutrition, exercise. So there are a lot of things that we've learned to continue doing that are equally important, and making it a point to have time to dedicate to that as a company. And our CEO comes to these sessions, to whether it's the culture team meeting, or he actually joined one of the exercise programs. It's like, okay, great. We're all in this together. And I think that's an important priority, to remember that we are a human being, and we have a whole life to think about.
Wow, that's great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Karen. Did anybody, as the last final two comments, maybe we can hear from two different participants on either what you do to ensure employee well-being, or even what you do when your teams are exhausted. Did anybody want to chime in?
Maybe
just for final brief comments? Yeah.
No. On the wellness approach, I think, or the morale. Well, before the pandemic, we normally in our company we have every 2 years a voice survey, which help us to listen to our employees with more than 60 questions, and we are consolidated that at the worldwide level, but for each level. Then on a practical approach, we have also a social committee and a wellness committee. But it's not managed by the management line or the HR. It's only group of volunteer people, and we are giving to them a budget, and they are organizing a lot of events. So what we spoke about, fun event, having a 5K anniversary, celebrate the employee of the month. They are doing that. It's not the HR, it's not the management line. It's
Wow.
only people who are working, and each year they could change. And I think it's very important because we had such many ideas. We had spa, acupuncture, people. And also, what is very important, what we are doing today is very important, is crucial. What we are doing today, we have the same approach in our teams to debate on one big topic and have discussion with people in our team. And very important because we leverage the awareness of those topics and we are sharing. And for me, that's it contributes, what we are doing contributes to our humor, to give us some positive thinking and to engage ourselves in the to progress. I think that
I would throw two little things out, Olivier. Like we've encouraged anybody that owns a meeting to do a meeting audit and ask yourself, do you need it? Because we threw so many things on and made them recurring at the beginning of the pandemic, and that crap is still on people's calendars, and it's not as effective as it needs to be. And then this is so simple, but if you have not looked at your email system, if you're using the latest version of Outlook, it has it in there in your calendar options. You can change your default meeting invite setting to be 5 minutes less for a 30-minute meeting. So it only schedules 25 minutes on a calendar, and an hour meeting, it only schedules for 50 minutes. And that's kind of what you need. And even then, if you kind of run over, then everyone's not late to the next thing, even though we have no hallways in the virtual hallway, like people are still 5 minutes late. Because sometimes we just want to get up and pee, and like we've scheduled places in worlds where that's not possible. And that's like such a core well-being thing to just go get a glass of water and walk around your studio apartment or wherever you are. And that weirdly, that 5 to 10 extra minutes is not detracting from productivity. And it is such a simple hack that changes just like your happiness at the end of the day.
Wow, that was a great suggestion. I think I'm going to take that on. I'm going to take that on because I know that I feel rushed sometimes because everything is just so scheduled back to back sometimes.
I mean, that means we have to sign off right now. We're done. It's 12:50.
Right. Okay. Bye everyone. Okay, so let me go quicker. So let me ask the question that Laura Marks asked, and thank you, Laura, for your question. So she asked, I think everybody knows, we started the Q&A. Have any of you migrated from a platform where performance evaluations were independent of compensation to a pay-for-performance organization?
I have, but it's very stale. It's like a decade ago, so I don't know how real it is anymore.
Okay, so the question is, so the answer is no, nobody has experienced that as of now. But Laura, if you have any follow-up questions, you can just unmute yourself and ask or put it on the chat. And in the meantime, please, we already opened our panel for questions. So our participants, we love you. You're so precious to us. This panel is for you. So please feel free to either raise your hand or you can just, unmute yourself and ask a question, or you can put your question on the chat. So I'm just going to give a little time for everyone to see if they have a question.
I did want to mention that I changed when I came into the company. I changed our bonus program to be paid on EBITDA, and it was not previously paid that way. So it realigned the focus for the employees to all be working towards the same goal. And so the bonus is paid on EBITDA, and as opposed to how it was set up previously. So it really has it has driven people to be more business focused, to understand what's going on, and to help each other like another department, because it all makes the success of the company.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much, Karen. Laura said thank you just the same. It's a challenging situation. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Laura, for we definitely understand you 100%. Anybody else had a question? And by the way, our panelists can also ask questions because now that you all have one another, so whether it's other participants or panelists or anybody who's interested in asking a question, this is the time to do that.
So Professor Armagon, I had one sort of question / opinion that came by that might lead to some further discussion in regards to all these, sort of ideas of, implementing fun opportunities and events in your workplace. But if that's not really the workplace culture, or if it's, uncomfortable for people because that's not the norm, or that's not something that, maybe there's a lack of distrust with the leadership, it can in turn maybe create a toxic environment where people are feeling forced to engage in these activities that really don't feel true to their heart. So I don't know if anyone has any further insight or experience with that, but that was something that came up.
I think that leadership involvement is the critical piece when it comes to that. If your leaders won't model it, like Kara was saying, like if your CEO won't come to the workout thing, then it's probably not to land the same as if they will show up. And I think you can use that as a bit of the guide to what feels authentic to your organization. Like if your C-suite wouldn't show up to do it ever, then it probably isn't aligned with your organization's values. And then that opens a different door of questions that you can ask. But like, I think that's the sort of stuff that everyone can change, and you can look for things that you don't also have to look for everything to start at the CEO level from a perspective, like you're as a leader, if you're a leader of a 3-person team, like that team has a culture. And so if you're responsible for those 2 others or 3 others, what can you do just within that group and the safety net and space that you can create there?
And if I may add, I think it's like what you said, Daniel, the word authenticity or being authentic. So I think what is also important, we started doing then like voluntary happy hours and so forth. And I think it's really important, if you say it's voluntary, then don't look who's participating, be happy and be grateful for everybody who joins and enjoy the time with them, but don't go through the list and say, oh, I invited my whole company, but only those 20 showed up, and now I'm going to be mad at everybody else. I think it's very important that you make it also clear these are the meetings which are mandatory because they are business meetings, and these are the meetings where we just want to have fun, and you don't need to be there. If you don't feel like fun today, don't come, and that's fine. No judgment. So I think that's also very, very important.
It seems that so many of your comments are around this whole idea of, of course, we want to create a positive culture in our organizations where people feel free to join or not join, and that they can be a part of an organization where the leadership is involved and there's a camaraderie, there's unity, there's teamwork. So I'm just, even though we didn't necessarily use the word culture, in every sentence, I'm just hearing very loudly that developing those kinds of organizational cultures are so pivotal for the success of the company, especially during challenging times or when there's so much change going on. And Peter Chung on our chat asked such a wonderful question. He's asking, could you highlight the risks surrounding changes, especially those that may lead to downsizing or rework the processes? So can you highlight some of the risks that comes with these change efforts, such as, those that lead to downsizing or, changing work processes? I'm repeating just to give more time.
I can jump on this because during this crisis, I've been obliged to do layoff, to do furlough, to close some results, to adapt the office. It was, there's a CEO who did the same thing and write a letter. I won't mention his name. he wrote a letter, courageous letter, to every employee to explain why he was obliged to do that, why those decisions protect the company. So for me, yes, I did some re-engineering. I did some change. What is very important is to explain why, what we want to do. If we are streamlining the process, reducing, downsizing, it could hurt people. That's why you have, as a manager, you have to keep your management as approachable, close to the people. And you have to understand, you have to give them sense, uh, you have to give the ability to have a free speech and speak with them. And the individual approach and the collective approach, that's very important. You could manage those things. And for me, when I came back and I met the manager, people about that, because it has been very difficult for some teams, they understood that it was the wise decision to protect the team, to protect the company. It was not an easy decision, but sometimes as HR, we are here also to protect the company, to protect the brand, and sometimes some change. This is a survival approach. The only way to succeed in it, if I can say, that's not a beautiful word, but is to give a sense of what we want to do and why we are obliged to do that.
And to add to this, because Olivier, we're sitting in the same boat. We, you know, that we are engaged in the cruise line business. There have been no cruise ships sailing for more than a year now, actually last Friday. So I think what is also important is to also share a vision and share with the team that you believe in the future. We had to downsize as well. We also had to lay off people. We had to furlough people. But we always make it very clear that we are a company who has been in the business for 141 years. We're going to want to be in the business for the next 141 years, and we believe in the business. Maybe short term, there is no business or very little business, but long term, we believe in this. We believe in the business, and for those who are still with us, we believe in those people, and we believe that there is a future. So I always, when I talk to the team in town halls, I also say it's not a question of if the business is going to return, it's a question of when the business is going to return. And I think making this clear over and over again that we believe in the future and that we have a vision is very important as well.
And that's why maybe, as you mentioned, say you have to manage two timelines. Where you want to be in the future, be able to envisioning the future, but also reduce the pace. 2 months, you mentioned 2 months, the goals. It's very important for me to manage those two at this pace, the goals that we are giving to our employees, or the communication also that we are doing.
Yes, it's just so crucial. So just to, in all honesty, I want to go on and on, but I don't think we'll have any participants left if we overdo with the time. So just to wrap up and just share some of the ideas, and just for everybody to know, we're going to put together a key takeaways and share with all the participants. So we're going to be doing that. And before we close up, I just want to go through some of the notes that I took. So we definitely talked about the importance of constant and transparent communication, communicating, digitally. Olivier mentioned, Facebook town hall meetings and such. We talked about the importance of having the CEO, the C-suite, and the employees coming together, and then working as a team, being united. We talked about scheduling bi-weekly meetings within departments, divisions to check up, check to see how people's mindsets are, where everybody is, how they're doing, how they're progressing, what are the challenges, what are the difficulties. We talked about, I think that was Daniel that talked about, guiding principles, having guiding principles and sharing those principles, constantly with the employees. We talked about demystifying the emotions around change. We talked about, how as leaders, we are enablers of strategy and enablers of big change. So we have to adapt people's skills, adapt to the changing times. And we talked about the importance of, obviously putting together cross-functional teams and, putting people into projects and doing that in advance, right? Karen mentioned doing that a year in advance in some circumstances and just starting that process. I wrote some, it's impossible for me to go through all of them. So just to add a few more, we talked about the company culture, the culture of the team. We talked about, monthly celebrations, organizing different events, not just by HR. I know Olivier talked about, mentioned how it's important, maybe to have volunteering employees in the company, as a team, and that team can be revolving over time, but they create these different fun events. And we talked about how you really coming together, creating a positive organizational culture, sharing, being transparent, communicating effectively, and knowing that every single employee is valuable, and that the top management team is very much connected to individuals at all levels, and we can come together and then give and receive feedback, create new ideas. Create a positive team atmosphere. So, and there's so much more. I'm going to put together a key takeaways, and Cindy's helping me with that. So I wanted to thank everyone. As we close up, did any of our panelists want to say anything, or we just love having you here, but if anybody wanted to say something, I just want to thank our audience and thank all of you for being here. Nadine, I think you're saying something, but your mic is.
I was just saying thank you. Thank you. That's what I wanted to. It was great to be part of the panel. So thank you for organizing. I learned a lot, and I'm super positive.
Yes, and with the key takeaways, we're going to learn even more. So our learning does not end today. It's going to be going further. And again, thank you, everyone. Unless somebody has something to say, so our participants, you're always free to log off. But and if anybody wants to stay for extra few minutes, we'll just be in their presence. But we're good with the panel. So thank you, Carolina. She says, thank you for this opportunity. Very insightful. Thank you,